Hello guys, and this is Scott here, and welcome to another historic weather video. And in this one we're going to have a look at the winter of 2012-2013, which was most notable for some cold and snow in January, and then that phenomenally cold March in 2013. So before we get started, I'd just like to say that many of the facts and figures that you hear in this video come from Trevor Harley's personal weather website. He has facts and figures for all weather months going back to the start of the 20th century, and then smaller fragments of information going back further than that. And many of the charts and charts that you see in this video come from wetterzentral.d. They have an archive of weather charts going back to January of 1871. So, just before we get started, looking at the charts, let's just put things into context. We'd had an absolutely dreadful summer. The summer of 2012 was horrendous, with some heavy rain and flooding, especially in the June of that year. And then we had a pretty horrible autumn as well, which was pretty cold and wet. So we finally got through to the winter, and this shown some signs of hope. It didn't get going straight away, but nonetheless there were signs of hope in December. So there we are on the 30th of November 2012, so the last day of the autumn, and we are actually in a bit of a cold pattern there. It's only very transient because there's no real block in there, but it's just a little bit of an early season northerly. And that goes through into the 1st of December. And December 2012 has a central England temperature of 4.8 degrees. Now, it has that CET because quite a chilly first half was sort of cancelled out by a pretty mild second half. So there we are on the 1st of December, and you can see that we are still continuing with that northerly. And then that goes on into the 2nd, before by the 3rd we bring a bit more of an Atlantic westerly in. But, it's not really a very mild westerly, this, because, you see, as we go through the 3rd and into the 4th, it's quite a northwesterly type wind. So, it is somewhat mild, but, it's not like a southwesterly, which would be very mild at this time of the year. And as we go through into the 5th, we bring a bit of a northerly back through the country. So, again, the temperatures fall away a bit more. And on the 6th, actually, you can see it, we bring a bit of a trough into the northwest. And this actually brought a bit of snow. So a bit of early season snow, just to kick off the winter. But it didn't last very long, though, because as we went through into the 7th and the 8th, the high pressure built back through. But then as we go through into the 9th, look how we've got look how we've got high pressure building over Scandinavia and a bit of a Greenland high. Now at the time this was actually forecasted to turn into quite a significant block. So as we go through into the 10th, you can see that we were very close to, going into a very block pattern. But it didn't really happen because as you can see we've got a bit of an area of low pressure between those two highs. And so it just stopped them merging together and kept us and sort of forced the highs apart and put us back into a bit more of a westerly flow. As you can see as we go through into the 11th, it doesn't happen into the 12th. And as we go into the 13th, then you can see we've got quite a big area of low pressure developing in the Atlantic. And actually that after this, this promising chilly first half to the winter, that really just shown where the rest of it was going to go, because as we go through into the 14th we're now pushing milder weather back through the country and we're bringing up rain bands. And actually because of this very unsettled second half of December, it actually made December 2012 the 6th wettest of the last century, and it actually meant that the 2012 floods actually carried on into December. So, a flashback to, the rest of the year was about to happen. So as we go through into the 15th, there we're just very unsettled. All the blocking has now gone away, but it's sort of in western parts of Russia there, so it does just show signs, of that it could come back. Into the 16th and the 17th of December, we just stay very unsettled, and into the 18th and into the 20th and the 22nd we go very mild there on the 22nd. And there's the chart for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. So, there's no signs of any cold weather around. We're just cold, wet, well, relatively mild, I should say. So it's just a very miserable end to December, really. There's Boxing Day, and into the 28th, another very mild push. And then another big area of low pressure on the 30th, and into New Year's Eve. And then we go into the start of January 2013, and January is where things start to get a little bit more interesting. It has a central inland temperature of 3.5 degrees, which doesn't really say too much about the month, because, the mildness of December actually extends into the first part of the month. But then it turned very cold around the middle of the month, so, that just meant that the central inland temperature was thrown off a little bit. But nonetheless, it was a very interesting month, this. So there we are on New Year's Day 2013, and we're where December left off, really, just very unsettled and very wet. And that goes through into the 2nd and the 3rd of January. And we actually go exceptionally mild at the start of January, so into the 4th we have temperatures going up into the mid-teens. But as we go through the 5th and into the 6th, you can see that high pressure, it's starting to very gradually edge towards Eastern Europe. And as we go through into the 7th, you can see that it's just trying to ridge up to Scandinavia. And again, that's just a little bit of a precursor of what's to come in January. But as we go through the 8th and into the 9th of January, you can see very gradually it's starting to look a lot more messy, that pressure chart. We're very gradually starting to build up high pressure over Scandinavia and in the Norwegian Sea. And, the Atlantic's very slowly being blocked. And as we go through into the 10th, this is where you can start to see, the cold pattern emerging now. Because through the 10th and into the 11th, you can see that we're very slowly starting to bring a bit of a northeasterly into the country. And this just very gradually starts to drop the temperatures. So bit by bit, as we go into the 12th, the temperatures fall further and further. And by the 13th, you can see there now we're in a proper block pattern. And in the early hours of the 13th, we have temperatures down to minus 13.2 degrees at Buxton. So, the winter is, the proper colours of the winter's properly showing its hand now. It's quite late, but nonetheless it is starting to show its hand. And as we go through the 14th and into the 15th of January, we very quickly start to drop those temperatures further. So, the daytime temperatures by this point aren't much above freezing. And we have snow showers coming in to the east coast. And again, on the 16th, those are the upper air temperatures there on the 16th. You can see that we have the minus 10 Celsius isotherm into the eastern part of the country and the minus 5 Celsius isotherm across a good portion of the country. So that tells us there that it is cold enough for snow across a large part of the UK. And then the 17th again is another very cold day, and this is where this is where we start to set up the first snow event now, because as we go through into the 18th, you can see that we have low pressure coming into that block. And I actually remember this period very well, actually, because this was my last year of high school, so I was in year 11 at this point. And I remember my form tutor telling us, check the website tomorrow because we are forecasted a blizzard. And someone actually played the BBC forecast. And it did say that there was a lot of heavy snow around on this day. My area was forecasted to, get 10 or 15 centimetres. And if I can find the forecast, I'll leave it in the description below. But nonetheless, when we actually got to the 18th, all the snow actually missed my area. It mainly affected the south. It gave the south quite a big snowfall. You know, one of the biggest snowfalls probably since the winter of 2010, so early January 2010 or December, whichever. So it was quite a notable event for the far south, and they had, you know, 10, 15, even 20 centimetres in a few places. So, you know, the proper colours of the winter have shown its hand by this point. And actually this snow event on the 18th actually opened up quite a snowy part of January. Because as we go through into the 19th, you can see that the low pressure starts to die to the south, you know, that brought that heavy snow on the 18th. And now it's really opening the doors to an easterly wind. So, you know, the temperatures again are barely above freezing. And as we go through to the 20th, you can see again we've got another area of low pressure developing out in the Atlantic. And overnight 20th into the 21st, this brings a lot of heavy snow up where I am this time. So I remember being off school on the 21st. This was a Monday. You know, so we were let down on the Friday, but, you know, on the Monday it came. And this, I think, probably gave me about 5 or 10 centimetres. It wasn't, you know, a massive fall, but, you know, it was decent enough. And so, yeah, again, just another snow event in this middle part of January. But, you know, it goes on, because as we go through into the 22nd and the 23rd, that low pressure, you know, just hangs around the country. So it keeps a lot of snow showers around the UK. And as we go into the 24th of January, again, we've got another area of low pressure developing in the Atlantic. And that actually hits us overnight 25th and into the 26th of January. And this, I think, gave the heaviest snowfall of the winter itself, so the meteorological winter. And I had another 5 or 10 centimetres on this day. So I had quite a covering really by this day. This was a Friday and into a Saturday morning. And this again affected quite a large part of the country. So a lot of the northern part of England and into the Midlands were hit by this band of snow. However, it didn't really do, it wasn't to last though, unfortunately, because as we went into the 27th, you can see that this actually brought a milder westerly, and you can see we've got a massive area of low pressure in the Atlantic there, and that put strain on the Scandinavian high. So it just meant really that by this point it was just enough to shift that colder pattern, and put us back into a westerly. And that was really, what finished off January. And again, this is another reason why the Central England temperature wasn't, freezing cold, despite it being quite a cold and snowy middle half. So then as we go into the 28th and the 29th, you can see again, that goes into a southwesterly. So actually on the 29th, we go very mild again. So we have temperatures into the low to mid-teens in the south, just a week after they've barely been able to get above freezing. And then that takes us, into the latter days of the month then. So the 30th and the 31st, we keep it, very mild. And then we go into the start of February 2013. And February again was another relatively chilly month. It wasn't freezing cold, but it was a chilly month with a Central England temperature of 3.2 degrees. So it starts off pretty mild with that westerly flow coming through the country. But as we go through the second, you can see that the high pressure pulls out a bit into the mid-Atlantic, and that puts us into a northerly there on the second. So, again, we just get another cold shot. That's the theme of this winter, really. It was very much alternating mild and cold spells, none of which really lasted very long. The mild was always replaced by cold, and the cold would always, come to an end relatively soon. And as we go through into the 3rd of the 3rd of February again, we're in sort of an unsettled west to northwesterly there. And as we go through into the 4th, we get a real spell of classic cold zonality here. As you can see, the high pressures, sort of hanging around the Azores, into the mid-Atlantic. And we have low pressure over Iceland. And what that's doing is bringing a northwesterly from Greenland. And usually northwesterlies, cold zonality, it's usually just enough for snow in the northern half of the country, and it can really dump quite a lot. So as we go through the 4th and into the 5th of February, again, a real spell of cold zonality. And I remember this day very well too. I remember going to bed on the Monday night, which was the 4th, and then getting up on the Tuesday morning, and there was about 10 centimetres of snow, and some very big cumulonimbus, so some real big showers that were coming off the Irish Sea. And so it was a very much a classic sunshine and snow showers day. And there was actually reports of thunder snow on this day, can you believe? Because, some of the showers developed so much. So there was some lightning around on this day. So, it really was another notable event in this winter. And those are the upper air temperatures there on the 5th. And as you can see, it is cold enough for snow again. They're not exceptional upper air temperatures, but they are cold enough for snow. And then as we go into the 6th of February, that then gives way to a northerly. So again, another big cold shot as we go into the 2nd week of February and into the 7th and the 8th before, the milder weather comes back by the 9th. So again, it's just a very temporary thing, because as we go through the 10th and into the 11th, you see that low pressure dives to the south, and this actually brings a widespread snowfall, because what we do there is you can see the on the northern side of the low, we actually bring cold air off the continent, and this undercut the rain band and gave quite a widespread snowfall overnight, 10th and into the 11th of February. Again, the mild comes back, and so really through this middle part, so the 12th, 13th, 14th of February, we go into a bit more of a wet and windy regime. And then into the 16th and the 18th, again, we're threatening to turn it colder again by the 20th and into the 21st and the 22nd. And by the 23rd, high pressure's setting up around Scandinavia again, so we're turning it a bit colder, so the end of February 2013 ends off on a colder note once again. Into the 24th and the 25th, before the high pressure then collapses through the country on the 26th and into the 27th. So it's a very settled end to the meteorological winter. And there's the chart for the 28th, again the high pressure's just around the country. And then we go to the 1st of March 2013, and I particularly don't have very good memories of this month. This was the month really that kind of killed off my liking for cold and snow. I don't have very good memories of this month at all, but we're not going to get into all of that. So there's the chart for the 1st of March, and you'd probably think by this point the winter was coming to an end, but oh no, it wasn't, because March 2013 has a Central England temperature of 2.7 degrees, which is phenomenally cold for a March, and it's actually the coldest March on the CET records since 1883. So it's a phenomenal month for cold weather. And even more remarkably is, even with that CET, the first week of it was actually pretty mild, because as we go through the 1st and into the 2nd, you see we've got high pressure, just hanging around the country, and what this is doing, is just keeping us it's giving us mildish days, but then chilly nights where, the winds are light. And as we go through the 3rd and into the 4th, we actually get quite a long fetch southeasterly. So overnight, so on the 4th and into the 5th, we actually have temperatures going up to 17.5 degrees in parts of Wales, in Tros-Coed for more specifically. So it's just one very brief taste of spring before the real bitter cold of March 2013 kicked in. Because as we go through to the 6th, you can see, if you look over Greenland now, we've got the blocking developing and the Atlantic's being blocked, and very slowly now we're starting to turn the winds into the east. So as we go through the 7th and into the 8th of March, you know, the temperatures are now falling away. All that mild early spring weather is being driven back to the south of Europe, and temperatures now are falling quite considerably, and we're bringing snow showers in along the east coast now. And that gets more severe as we go through the 9th and into the 10th of March. And if you look there on the 10th of March, we've got low pressure developing out in the Bay of Biscay. And as we go through into the 11th of March, this brings a real dumping of snow for the Channel Islands. You know, one of the biggest blizzards the Channel Islands have seen in a very, very long time. You know, it did just about get into southern counties of England, but you know, the main focus of this area of low pressure was, you know, the southern counties of England and the Channel Islands and northern France. You know, for the Channel Islands and northern France, it was, as I said, one of the biggest snow events for quite some time. You know, this dropped over a foot of snow, you know, just in one go. And some of the drifts were about 5 or 6 foot deep, so it really was an extraordinary event for so late in the year. And actually further north where I am, you know, it was actually another sunshine and snow showers day, and temperatures were barely above freezing once again. So, you know, it's just one of those rare instances where you get, you know, the depths of winter so late into the spring, but you know, it wasn't done yet. Because as we go through, so that actually those are the upper air temperatures there on the 11th of March. You know, we have phenomenally cold air, the minus 10 Celsius isotherm across a huge part of the country, and even the minus 15 Celsius isotherm coming into the parts of the northeast. So that is bitterly, bitterly cold continental air, that is. And you know, as I said, it's not done yet, because as we go through the 12th and into the 13th of March, that develops into more of a northerly. And into the 14th and the 15th of March, you know, we get a little bit of a milder interlude there. But as I said, as we go through into the 16th, that low dives to the south again. And by the 17th, we're bringing another northeasterly there into the country. And so again, we have sunshine and snow showers across the country there on the 18th. And that goes on into the 19th and the 20th. You know, by this point, temperatures are barely above freezing. We have temperatures down to minus 10, minus 11 degrees across a huge part of Scotland and northern England. And that's the chart for the 20th, you know, that's the spring equinox there, the 20th of March, and you know, there's absolutely no sign whatsoever of spring at all. We have another channel low coming through the country, so again, that's bringing more snow to the south. As we go through the 21st and into the 22nd of March, again, we've got another low winding itself up in the Atlantic. An overnight 22nd and into the 23rd. This gives another big dumping of snow, but this time for the northern half of the country. So this mostly missed me, but it actually, you know, gave several feet of snow over the Pennines, you know, several feet of snow in March. You know, this is, you know, a phenomenal weather event. You know, that's another thing about this month though, it did tend to just favour the same areas. You know, it was bitterly, bitterly cold, but it wasn't snowy for everyone. You know, some areas did miss it altogether. But you know, it snows throughout the whole day in the 23rd. You know, the places that really got pelted, the 23rd, you know, saw a whole day of snow. But then as it collapses away into the 24th, it just gives way to another bitter easterly again. You know, into the 25th and the 26th. Look at that chart there on the 26th. You know, it really is phenomenal. At this point, you know, daytime temperatures are barely above freezing. You know, 0, 1 or 2 degrees across a huge swathe of the country. And that really is very remarkable when you consider the fact that by this time, the sun is as high as it is in around mid-September. And days, you know, are 12, nearly 13 hours long. It really is very, very remarkable, this. You know, and those are the upper air temperatures there on the 26th. We have the minus 10 Celsius isotherm across pretty much the whole of the north of the country. You know, it's just, that is proper winter air. And, it goes on into the 27th and the 28th of March. It just shows no sign into the 29th. The Atlantic's still blocked off into the 30th. And then the last day of March, the 31st, this was actually Easter Sunday. And as you can see, we've got that area of high pressure that's built over the country. And this allows temperatures to drop to minus 12.5 degrees in Braemar, which actually makes it the coldest Easter on record. The coldest Easter Sunday. And it goes on into the start of April as well. It's just cold into the start of April. We actually get a bit more snow overnight first into the 2nd of April for the southwest. So, it shows no sign of ending. Into the 2nd and the 3rd, it just stays very blocked. And into the 4th and the 5th, again, we bring back another northeasterly. Into the 6th and the 7th of April. But now it is starting to show signs that it is going to, start to slowly break down. Because as we go through into the 8th, you can see the Atlantic is very slowly starting to attack now. And heights over Greenland are, starting to diminish very slowly. So as we go through into the 9th and the 10th of April, the lows are slowly making inroads, and this was actually a very wet period, this, in the middle of April. As you can see, the 10th and into the 11th were just bringing low after low in, so it was very wet, this. But it is very slowly now signalling the end of this cold spell. As we go through the 12th and into the 13th, the Atlantic gives another big, another shove, and by the 14th we bring the southwesterlies in, quite a long fetch southwesterly there. And into the 15th, so spring, and spring finally arrived in the middle of April. Overall it was a very cold spring. May was colder than average as well, but finally by the middle of April we bring more in the way of spring to the UK. Now the real question is, what caused that phenomenally cold March? Well, the culprit for this is believed to be, it is a sudden stratospheric warming. That said, this is a chart there for the stratospheric temperature at 10 HPA over the North Pole. And the bit we're looking at is the bit I've highlighted there in the middle of the chart. And as you can see, in December 2012, we were almost record-breakingly cold, before in January the temperatures just absolutely shot up. That was a sudden stratospheric warming. It was one of those rare instances where a stratospheric warming just completely annihilated the polar vortex. And this is believed to be, the culprit for the cold in March. It's not, because these things do take a bit of time to develop, so I don't really think this had an effect on what we saw in January. I think January was more just a bit more of a typical cold winter cold spell. Of course I can't prove that, but I think, the sudden stratospheric warming was the culprit for March. And actually I've actually got these from meteoseal.fr. And these are the stratospheric temperatures, and this I'm going to show you was that stratospheric warming. So on the 29th of December, you can see we've got quite a strong polar vortex there, and we've got, warming starting to occur over Siberia. And as we go through the 30th and into the 31st, you can see that developed, it quickly develops that southern stratospheric warming. And as we go into January, so the 1st, the 2nd and into the 3rd of January, that really develops. The temperatures at 10 HPA go above freezing, and that is something that is really rare with a stratospheric warming. It's only the biggest ones you see that with. And as we go through the 5th and the 6th and into the 7th, it makes inroads into that polar vortex. So by the 8th, 9th and into the 10th, just look how that polar vortex was completely and utterly obliterated. Into the 11th and the 12th, it was just absolutely annihilated. It completely reversed, the winds in the northern hemisphere. So, as I said, this was the culprit for the cold March. Into the 13th, the 14th and the 15th, there's just absolutely nothing left of the polar vortex. And that's actually as far as we're going to go in this video. But you know, what was more remarkable is that after that very cold winter and spring, we then got a very, very hot summer in 2013. You know, July actually saw quite a prolonged heat wave, and that's what we're going to have a look at in tomorrow's historic video. So I'm giving you two this weekend. So that's going to do it for this historic video, and as I said, stay tuned tomorrow for the summer of 2013.